Eric here from PSXboxIndies.com. Did you know that modern video games are very different from the games of the past in the fact that they can be, and usually are, updated after launch so that even if a game launches in a bad state, it will probably be better months or years down the road? I know you're sitting there furrowing your brow and grunting that of course you know this. But judging from the fact that way too many people pass judgment on a game at launch and then never bother to look into it again, while still loudly screaming their outdated opinions from launch into the void of the internet, tells me you're probably a liar pants on fire. Of course there are still games that launch bad and never get fixed, and there are certainly games that get post-launch support that still suck, but there are also bright shining examples of developers actually giving a crap and trying to make their games better, and we need to be shouting those games from the rooftops to let everyone know they should play them. Today's video is about one of those games, Fallout 76, and why you should definitely give it a shot. It isn't just okay now, it isn't just passable, it's actually a great experience all around with lots of new content planned for the years ahead. So now is a great time to jump in. I'm not going to cover every aspect of the game because this isn't really meant to be a review, but I want to look at the specific problems the game started with and how they have been fixed. We're working on a lot of long-form videos covering a lot of interesting and unique topics about video games, and perhaps some other stuff. So if you enjoy this one, please like and subscribe to the channel. Fallout 76 had a rocky start indeed, but it wasn't all entirely the game's fault. Some of it was expectations versus reality, and some of it was definitely the fact that the game didn't start out in a very good state. But there's more to it. After years of saying, "Wouldn't it be cool to play Fallout Online with people?" those same people suddenly weren't interested anymore when Fallout 76 turned out to be an MMO. In other words, the built-in audience they thought they had when they were making it basically disappeared. There were also certain members of the media, who by the way, have been blacklisted by several publishers for ruining announcements by leaking stuff early, and they have a pretty obvious grudge against Bethesda in particular, started poisoning the well of information before the game was even officially announced, by basically telling everybody to be preemptively disappointed. Yes, the game did launch on November 14th, 2018 in a less than stellar state, with glitches and bugs and not a ton of content, and was definitely disappointing to start with. Thankfully, Bethesda kept plugging away to make the game better, with patches and updates, and now, in 2021, the game is in a very healthy state. I didn't personally start playing Fallout 76 until December 2020, so I can't speak for exactly how the game evolved over the years, but I can talk about what I expected based on reviews and online discussion, versus what the game actually is now. I'm level 215 and have played for something like 400 hours, just for the record, so I'd like to think that maybe I know what I'm talking about. Fallout 76 is indeed an MMO, which is part of why I was also hesitant to start playing the game at all, even though I'm a huge Fallout fan. I had imagined that it would just be a hellscape of players killing each other constantly, and griefing and ruining your fun, while you try to play the story and do your own thing. It turns out that isn't how the game is at all. In fact, most players were so disinterested in PvP combat that Bethesda ultimately added an option to turn off PvP damage in the adventure mode, and made an entirely separate Battle Royale mode called Nuclear Winter for the people that actually wanted to shoot each other. Surprisingly enough, later in 2021, the Nuclear Winter mode is also closing down because it was so unpopular. In other words, if you're hesitant about playing this Fallout MMO because you're afraid that the other players will constantly be hunting you down and harassing you, don't worry. Truth be told, the community in Fallout 76 is actually pretty friendly and awesome. The map is fairly big, so even with a full server load of up to 32 players, which technically it's 24, but there are a few extra slots to allow friends to play on the same server, you rarely actually come across other players while you're out exploring. The only time players really group together is for endgame bosses that require all hands on deck to help out, or other public events that multiple players can take part in. And those are some of the coolest moments in the game, when everybody shows up to take down a Scorchbeast Queen and everybody works together. Players are generally just friendly to each other by default, I've found. It isn't uncommon for higher level players to help out lower level players if they see them fighting a group of enemies or something. It is also a sort of tradition for higher level players to give items like stim packs and ammo to lower level players just to help them out. I'm personally fond of going to the entrance of Vault 76, where every player starts the game, and leaving a bunch of stim packs and radaways and ammo on the ground to help out new players. That's just the type of community the game has. There's not really any griefing and harassing players or being mean, in my experience. And honestly, if you do come across somebody that's being a jerk, you can just quit the game and go to a different server, which on Xbox Series X takes like 10 seconds. I also want to say that the game is totally playable solo. You won't be able to kill a Wendigo Colossus or Scorchbeast Queen by yourself, and there are some other events that aren't really doable with one person. But in those cases, like I mentioned before, other players will always show up to help. For the rest of the game, however, you can certainly play it completely by yourself, and see all of the story missions and probably 95% of the overall content. The game can be more fun with other people, certainly, but if you're shy or have no friends or just prefer to play solo, that shouldn't stand in your way of giving Fallout 76 a try. That wasn't necessarily always the case, however. When the game launched, the game world was a typical MMO, where the world was split into distinct areas of lower and higher level enemies. There were areas of the world that lower level players couldn't explore because the enemies would be too strong for them to deal with. That all changed in September 2020 with the One Wasteland for All update, where the game was totally rebalanced so that enemies scaled with players everywhere on the map. So you could now explore anywhere and everywhere and truly do anything you wanted, just like a normal Fallout game. Of course, running into a Deathclaw or Wendigo or other mini-boss type enemy still provides a challenge, but you no longer had to worry about wandering into the wrong part of the map and getting destroyed by a lowly feral ghoul that was higher leveled than you. I also want to note that despite the level scaling, there's still a few difficulty spikes that will keep you on your toes. Some particular moments in the story definitely punish you if you're not strong enough. And there are some level thresholds when the enemies you face suddenly get stronger. Even with the level scaling, I wouldn't ever say the game is too easy, as you still have to be careful depending on what you're fighting and how many of them there are. And it is still easy to be overwhelmed and taken out extremely quickly. I personally find it to be just the right balance of occasional challenge, while still feeling like a level 200 plus badass wearing awesome power armor. One of the complaints when Fallout 76 launched was that the game didn't have any human NPCs in the world at all. Instead, all of the shops were run by robots, and you got all of your quests from computer terminals. That all changed in April 2020 with the Wastelanders update. This content update saw the addition of a ton of new content, including human NPCs roaming the map, 2 new large settlements of people, and factions of human NPCs, including Settlers, Raiders, the Mothman Cult, the Psychotic Blood Eagle Gang, and more. These NPCs and the new quests and story content made the world feel a lot more like old Fallout. Like I said, I didn't start playing until December 2020, which was after Wastelanders and the Steel Dawn update, which added the Brotherhood of Steel to the game, had already dramatically altered the game world and overall story. Because of that, I was able to soak in everything all at once rather than waiting months for new content updates, which helped me appreciate the game for what it was versus what I wanted or expected it to be. And I can honestly say now with 100% certainty that I think Fallout 76 is a very good Fallout game. The world is interesting and fun to explore. It isn't huge or anything, but I don't feel like it's too small either. It has several distinct regions, all with something unique to offer. There are also a lot of unmarked Easter eggs and fun things to find that aren't marked on the map, so exploration is rewarding and satisfying. I also think that the story content itself is very well done, and there are some quests that are right up there among the very best quests in the entire franchise. When you're out doing story quests, it feels exactly like Fallout 3 or New Vegas or Fallout 4. So if you're still disappointed that the game is an MMO instead of a single player game, you really shouldn't be. You're still exploring and learning about the lore of the world and doing specific things that fill in the gaps of the overall story of not just Fallout 76, but the entire Fallout franchise. If you enjoy the Fallout universe, you owe it to yourself to play Fallout 76 for the story content. It takes about 50 to 60 hours to play all of the story stuff. But what do you do after that? Currently, the main criticism of the game in 2021 is that there isn't much to do in the end game. Once you beat the story and do all of the daily quests and public events a few times, there isn't really much else to keep you engaged. That has somewhat been fixed with the addition of Seasons, where you do daily and weekly quests to move around a game board and earn items and weapons and other unlockable doodads for each of the 100 spots on the game board you reach. Even doing Seasons, though, only takes maybe 30 minutes a day to do all of the daily quests and max out your reward. I don't necessarily think that is a huge problem, though. You won't be hopelessly addicted to it and want to play it for hours and hours like you did when you were doing the story content. But logging in for 30 minutes or an hour a day or every other day isn't a bad thing, and the rewards during the season are worth it for the most part, so it still feels rewarding. If you're self-motivated though, there are still certainly other things you can do to keep yourself moving along and having fun. I've had several times where I thought, okay, after I do this I'm done with the game for a while. But then I find something else new to do and just keep playing. At first, I didn't ever bother to launch a nuke, because it seemed too complicated and overwhelming. So that was my first post-game goal. That first time took something like 90 minutes, but now I can run through the nuclear silos in less than 25 minutes. My second goal was to get the best armor, which meant doing missions to earn treasury notes, to then turn in for gold bullion, which then got turned in for an armor plan to make the armor I wanted. My third goal was to collect the best possible weapons that I actually like to use, which of course then turned into an ongoing regular task of stocking up on enough ammo to be able to keep using them. My next goal was to get all of the Xbox achievements that I could. Then my goal was to get as many of the in-game achievements, many of which reward you with the premium Atom currency you can use in the in-game shop, as possible. Then I wanted to build a sick awesome camp. Then my goal was to collect valuable resources that are a pain in the butt to find and sell them to other players to make lots of caps. Every time I've thought I was done, something else in Fallout 76 pulls me back in. What I'm trying to say with all of this is that you should give Fallout 76 a shot. Most of the complaints people had about the game when it launched have been addressed, and the experience is pretty solid now. It isn't perfect by any means. There's still some jankiness and glitches, and the gameplay feels a little funky at first because the game basically has to check in with the server for every action you do. But I have had a fantastic time with it in my 400 hours of playing, and don't see myself stopping anytime soon. I also can't stress enough the fact that it isn't just an MMO with a Fallout skin. It's actually a great Fallout game in its own right, with a fantastic world to explore and an excellent story. I was kind of down on Fallout after Fallout 4, like a lot of people were, but Fallout 76 has made me fall in love with the franchise all over again. I highly recommend you give it a try. You can play it via Xbox Game Pass on Xbox or PC, so please play it. Thanks a lot for watching.